the On Purpose Woman Global Community and founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine. Welcome to Connections on Purpose. Whether you're here with us live on Zoom, joining us on Facebook, or watching later on YouTube, I'm glad you're here. And this is your time to slow down, fill up, connect with other heart-centered women, and learn how you can make your own difference in the world. I'm blessed to have one of those women who is making a tremendous difference in the world and has been since the first time I met her 20 plus years ago, and that is Andrea Hylen. And Andrea will be speaking on Follow the Clues, Be Willing to Go on the Ride. Andrea believes in the power of our voices to usher in a new world. She's the founder of Heal My Voice and the Incubator, an online co-working space for women. Her latest book, when I say latest, I mean latest, like a few days ago it was published, so this is cutting edge stuff, y'all. Follow the Clues, Living Your Life as a Grand Experiment with Curiosity, Courage, and Creativity. Andrea has worked with hundreds of women and men who have used writing and creativity to reclaim their inner authority and step into greater leadership. For current programs Andrea's offering, you can visit her website at andreahylen.com, and that link is also in the text of this video. And let me just say, Andrea, oh, that's the wrong book. Excuse me. It was right here where I thought it was.
It's being published
This
this
is a
week.
book from someone today. Yeah, this is the book, Follow the Clues. We'll have that link to also purchase the book in the text of this video. Thank you for kind of making a little bit of a debut here with us today to talk about your book. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. So you are on.
Well, Jenny, first of all, thank you for the invitation to speak at this meeting today. And thank you to the community of women who've been celebrating the launch of my new book, Follow the Clues. Um, wow, we just had such a rich meeting that was not recorded. I wish we had recorded like all these breakout rooms because the conversations were just so many examples of the topic that I'm going to share today. But I want to begin by just sharing a few things about the book before hopping into the topic. First of all, this is a book about navigating change and hearing your voice in a world filled with noise. So the stories that I shared in the book really show what it looks like to follow the clues that I've used examples from my life and from others, and what it looks like to listen to your intuition in real life. And so these are demonstrations, not theories, but moments when there was a small inner nudge that can lead you to unexpected opportunities that may be small or woo, big. And it is about developing deeper self-trust and meaningful transformation. In each chapter, I talk about mindset lessons, like ways to build support, ways to, as someone in the group just talked about, building a muscle, like ways to build a muscle to live your life with this grand experiment, curiosity, courage, and creativity. And I want to highlight something that a few months ago I spoke at the On Purpose Woman meeting with the topic listening, developing self-trust and inner knowing. And I shared a story about being guided to meditate for 1 hour each day and what that kind of looked like. It was 31 days in total. And we talked about meditative practices. And that really does tie into the first chapter in my book, which is about pausing and being present. So the recording of that talk is on the YouTube channel for On Purpose Woman Global Community, along with many other inspiring talks. So if it speaks to you at all, you can go to the YouTube video, or maybe you're listening to this on YouTube and then just look around at the other conversations that are there. But today I'm going to share some information from chapter 2 that's called Choose, Be Willing to Go on the Ride. And we just had this rich conversation about saying yes. And so I am going to talk about that a little bit. But the chapter opens with a quote from Carolyn North's book, World Shift Happens. And I'm going to read the quote to you to lay kind of a context here. Going around the circle 3 times, the teachers ask each student to say what he or she loves best in the world. The first time, the children's answers are more about what they think they love best. The second time around, it sounds more like shy wishing. But by the third time, their answers are coming from a deeper place, and they are surprising themselves by the force of their genuine wanting. Delia is shocked when, without meaning to, she blurts out, I love to sing. And I would call that Delia moment breaking free from resistance, letting go of what anyone else is saying or thinking, where this space opens up for a desire to burst through with a yes. And in my book, Follow the Clues, I tell a story. And I'll just say also, the stories I tell in the first few chapters are simple stories. And later on in the book, there's deeper stories that have more challenges, more life challenges. But this first story I'm telling about a day at a water park when three carloads of my family all decided to like arrive at this water park and spend the day together. So lots of people all over the park. And I spent most of the day with my youngest daughter, who was 5, and her cousin, who was 7. We hung out all day at the lazy river on inner tubes. It was a great day. I love a lazy river and just hanging out in the inner tubes. But throughout the day, as I was weaving around the lazy river, this other part of a bubbling desire came. I felt a yes to go on one of the really tall slides. I saw people having fun. Another part of me was filled with doubts and fears, with a list of reasons to say no because of an experience I had as a child that was a terrifying moment of feeling unsafe at a public swimming pool and a slide. So now at the water park, I had this desire bubbling up alongside intermingled with fear and doubt. But as we were getting ready to leave the park, my yes was so loud that I stopped everyone. I threw off my beach cover up and I ran up the stairs. And just like that little girl Delia burst out, I love to sing. My desire to go down the slide just burst through and was overriding all of the fears and doubts. And I said, yeah, yes. And that moment, when I really listened to the desire and I pushed through the resistance, I said yes. It created a touchstone of victory. And it's an experience that I carry with me. Whenever I feel this yes, a strong desire, I remember that day at the water park. And I have asked myself over the years, what would have happened if I hadn't gone down the slide? Like, what would my memory of that day have been? And I really think I would have been filled with regret and wondering what could have happened. So instead of limiting me by saying yes and going down the slide, it opened the door to listening to my desires, my feelings, my intuition. It's a touchstone for the willingness to go on the ride, on life's ride, and for what it can feel like to say yes, and even with a beating heart and nervousness to do something. So we were just in the breakout rooms pausing, and I'm going to ask the listening audience also to pause for a moment here and think about an experience where you've had this conflict between desire and doubts. And even think, is there something you wanted to say yes to? And instead of saying yes, maybe you held back and missed the opportunity. So, if in listening to the story or a couple of other stories I'm going to tell you, if something bubbles up, just write it down. Like acknowledge that it happened and give yourself some grace if you limited yourself, if you missed an opportunity. It isn't about beating yourself up, it's just understanding how resistance is something that can protect us And it's also something that can limit us. So noticing, was that a real yes or was it a no that protected you from something else also? So our yes can begin with a simple desire, like going on a water slide, or something bigger, like starting a business or moving to a new location. There's this flash of an idea and a clue that you want to try something. And all you need to do is take the first step to embrace your desire, to say yes, go down that first slide, break free of your resistance. So I want to just share a brief story that I had lunch with two friends recently, and they have decided to move to a different country. And when they arrive, they're going to be looking for work. And one of my friends said that he would like to change his career path, moving from working at home on a computer and being kind of feeling kind of isolated to a job in the service industry. He wants to interact with people in person. So as he described his desire, it was like his eyes lit up, and I could see this childlike wonder, this like, oh, goody, that would be so fun, to do that. And he was just talking about it. He was so lit up. And after 25 years in a career where he has made a lot of money and could retire with some minor lifestyle adjustments, it's possible that he could at least try it for a few months between, you know, the jobs. But another piece of information I want to say is that his spouse has citizenship in the new country, and he has a 3-year visa. And it's going to take another 8 months to determine if he will receive permanent citizenship. So there is a possibility that they will only be in the country for 3 years before returning to the US. They don't know. They're at a point of uncertainty. They're at a crossroads. So I was saying to him, why not say yes to trying out some other type of work? And I talked with them about the possibility of like following this desire that was so clear in the way that he talked about it, that use the opportunity to try something new. They have a place to stay with a relative. One of the jobs he's interested in exploring is in a town 2 hours away from this relative, where they're initially going to live. And I gave him this example. When my 16-year-old daughter and I moved from Maryland to California, not knowing if we were going to stay there or not, but I sold my house. We were ready for transition a few years after her dad died. We spent the first 6 months living in different parts of Los Angeles to see if we really wanted to stay there. And if so, where would we live? So we rented a room at a youth hostel. We stayed in hotels with small kitchens. We sublet a room in an apartment. And at each location, because Los Angeles is a big, big place, there's lots of different neighborhoods. And we could have lived anywhere, but we would stay there for 2 weeks and we would pretend that we did live there. We would just create our daily routines, and when we finally found a spot that fulfilled both our work and personal needs, we sublet an apartment for 2 months. It was in Burbank to kind of see, we were completing somebody else's lease. And then we committed to it for another year. Like we had experienced different parts of Los Angeles. We had a sense of where we each might live in the future. I even signed up for a mailbox in Santa Monica because I hoped to live there one day. And I have over the past, I don't know, 16 years. I have lived there on and off for a year or two at a time. But at that point, Burbank was a good place for both of us. And so as I was talking with my friends, I suggested that they just consider going to town and staying in an Airbnb or a hotel for a few weeks. They could still apply for jobs online and do interviews on Zoom if they wanted to, but they could just have time to see how it feels, to check out the service industries, to say yes to exploring this as a new option. And like I said, they were at a crossroads where they could make a choice to try something new. And so in my book, one of the mindset lessons, I mean, the first one is breaking free of resistance, and another one is say yes to your desires. But the first step is to say one little word, like say yes. And I heard the women in the groups talking about this, so I know in the this wonderful group meeting that is behind the scenes that other people feel this, that notice what it feels like in your body. And as soon as you say yes, you're setting something in motion. The word yes is a catalyst. Shonda Rhimes wrote a whole book about the power of saying yes back in, I don't know, it was 10 years, over 10 years ago. But that's because saying yes opens the door to possibilities. And the first clue might be a small action step, such as finding a piece of information, making a phone call. I would not say the first yes is sell everything, move to the, burn your your life down in one place and go move to another place. No, it's like take a step, say yes, and at each step you feel what that is. You have a connection to your heart, to your body. There's wisdom that's being shared with you. And it might be something, so, things show up where it's just like, I just need to clear some things out of my life. I need to prepare by going through and decluttering. I'm going to see what's taking up too much time. Or you may look at beliefs that are limiting you. So saying yes opens the door for more clues to appear. And as you take each action step, the next step will appear. One of the ways I've seen people set up walls and barriers is by telling themselves no, because they say it is not possible, because they've already limited the way that they see possibilities. And I will tell you that when your intuition is in gear, there's always some level of logic connected to it. It makes sense for you in some way. I also shared, and I'll just share this, there's a practice that I shared in this chapter called Finding the Yes. And it's a practice you can do for fun. If you feel stuck or overwhelmed or discouraged, you can try this. Just look for things that are a yes and build some momentum by taking action. So if you're at a place where you're like, it's all no, 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 no. The inspiration for this game came to me one day while I was playing with my 2-year-old grandson out in the yard. And I realized that just to keep him safe and set boundaries, I kept saying, oh, no, no, no. And I was finally I said, oh, let's play the yes game. Let's find the yes. And I looked around and I said, okay, yes, you can play in the yard. Yes, you can run and jump. Yes, you can sing out loud. Yes, you can eat your snack and drink your water. And then when something came up like, no, you cannot pull the dog's tail, I would look for more yes. Yes, you can pet the dog. Yes, you can throw a ball for the dog. Yes, you can run with the dog. And I found that I could actually apply that to my own life. I could play a yes game, searching for things that are a yes. It frees your mind and it expands your possibilities. And another variation is you can actually practice it for a time period, like 30 minutes of noticing what are you saying yes to, what are you saying no to, and see how that feels in your body. Last year, Shonda Rhimes published the 10th anniversary edition of her book, Year of Yes, and I was reading some of this new version, and she added a few more chapters, but she begins the book with, "This book is the same as before, but it also is not. It is brand new. It has changed, transformed, evolved, grown, just like me." So saying yes, being willing to go on the ride, evolves and expands your life. And I'm just going to share a few final thoughts about my book, Follow the Clues, to just show how things evolve in our lives by saying yes. The book's roots go back to 2007, when I began blogging and sharing private thoughts and feelings on my first MacBook. I started by writing a blog saying, "Dear listener, and I was sharing vulnerable stories from my bed late at night. So that was my first yes, I'm going to, dear listener. And then in 2015, I led a series of workshops called Carving a New Path, and many of the practices are in the book from those workshops. But I also wrote a series of articles for On Purpose Woman, and some of the stories in the book were originally developed there and published there. So that was my yes, I'm going to put these stories out into the world. And then in December 2023, I had the inspiration to pull all the writing into a book, and I set a goal to finish it in 6 months. Well, it took 2.5 years to write it and edit it and keep writing and editing. And doubts and fears were part of the imagining, creating, and building. And you know what? I'm going to share a secret. Even after I finished writing all of the book, and it was just a few months ago, I sat down one day and I thought, maybe I don't really even need to publish it. Maybe I just wrote it for myself. And although that can be true, there is no way that was true about this book. I have been guided to get this book out and have conversations. So, there were a lot of things I said yes to. I said yes to going to coworking and showing up 300 times on Zoom to write silently in a group with women and share my process with the women in the incubator. And I said yes to a monthly call with my writing coach, Sophia Wren. And I said yes to working with Ann Pamphilis, who created a beautiful book cover. And I said yes to speaking at On Purpose Woman 3 times a month for 5 minutes as a benefit of being a featured member. And all of the times I said yes, and I showed up to write and speak. Wow, I'm feeling the emotion around this and receive support. That was the antidote to the doubts and fears, like showing up and saying yes. So I'm just going to leave you with say yes to your desires, take the first small step, and be willing to go on the ride. Thank you.
Wow, Andrea, so much wisdom, so much grace, so much love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Not just for this amazing book, but for you and all you've brought to me and all you've brought to this community over the past, I always forget how many years, 22, 23. It doesn't matter really, but it's a
A
lot.
long
It's a lot.
time.
And I want to ask the women who are here with us on Zoom today, if you would all please unmute yourselves so Andrea can hear your support, your love, your applause, your yays, your woos, your whatever. And let's just do it. Okay, y'all, come on.
Great
Come
job.
on, Joanne. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, thank
Woo!
you. And for your wisdom and all the sharing that we were doing in the group before. It was just really special. Yeah, special day. Thank you.
You're getting lots of hearts and shows of love there too on Zoom. So,
Oh.
uh, thank you again, Andrea. And to all of you who are joining us live or catching the replay, thank you for being part of our community today. If you want to join us for a future Connections on Purpose gathering on Zoom or in person or explore On Purpose Woman magazine, just visit opwgc.com. You'll find opportunities for inspiration, connection, and growth, both personally and professionally. And that link is also in the text of this video, as is the link to Andrea's website and the link to her new book. So until next time, be curious, be inspired, be connected, and be on purpose. Thanks for watching.